It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. We just heard how Ann Arbor neighbors are banding together to get cheaper solar power through the Solarize program, and how those efforts are spreading across Metro Detroit. We're talking bottom-up clean energy. Now, let's flip to the top, the state capital in Lansing. House Republicans want to eliminate Michigan's promise of 100% clean energy by 2040. Committee Chair Pauline Wendzel says it's simple. Put reliability and affordability first. Now, on the other side of the aisle, Democrat Tanya Myers Phillips says utilities are the real problem. They keep raising rates. So everyone agrees energy bills are too high, but they don't agree on who's to blame. Kyle Davidson covered this back and forth. He's a reporter with Michigan Advance, and he joins me now. Kyle, welcome.
Morning, Robin. Welcome, and good to see you.
You too. So start by walking us through what House Republicans are proposing here.
Yeah, so essentially there's two bills in this package. The first, I think, with Pauline Wenzel's bill, essentially her discussion is that she wants to make the Michigan Public Service Commission, which kind of regulates the energy companies within the state. Every 5 years or so, these companies are required to put together what's known as an integrated resource plan. It's effectively their long-term plan on, hey, how are we going to make sure that all of our customers are able to get the energy that they need and that it's going to remain affordable to them. What her plan would do would essentially take away certain mandates that were put in place under the 2023 law and essentially say, hey, MPSC, when you're looking at energy resources under the integrated resource plans that Michigan's energy companies put before you, you need to focus on the most affordable options. It does take out requirements for environmental justice studies, as well as, discussions around greenhouse gas. I think when the quote that you mentioned at the beginning really kind of wraps that up, her argument is that we should focus on affordability and reliability there. There is another package there which would eliminate Michigan's 100% clean energy standard, which was put in place in 2023. The argument there from Representative Pat Outman essentially being that, this is kind of picking winners and losers in the markets. And part of that, it would also relax Michigan's waste energy reduction standard. And it would reduce the cap on distributed generation, things like, rooftop solar panels. It would reduce that cap from 10%, where it was placed in 2023, down to 1%. So only 1% of the annual energy generated by a utility's customers, they're only required to purchase about 1% of that from customers with distributed sources.
Okay.
So there's a real concern there from, energy advocates that this is going to limit the number of people who can, put solar panels on their rooftop.
Sure. Let me jump in here because you have given us a lot of numbers, a lot of facts to think about here. And what it all dials back to is whether this would actually be a move that would give people a break, that would actually make energy more affordable. And I do want to get into that with you in a moment. But first, let's take more of the 10,000-foot view. How significant is this rollback effort compared to other energy policy fights you've covered?
Yeah, this is not anything particularly new. Since the 2023 energy law was put in place, Republicans have been trying to get rid of it. I think in 2025, Michigan Senate Republicans introduced a package that would, have repealed the entire 2023 effort. It's been a long-running effort pretty much since this policy came down. So this is a little more of the same from Michigan Republicans. The main difference here is just that there are some segments from previous, laws that have been in place for a while that they're looking to get rid of. So the energy waste reduction standard that was put in place in 2008, there was another fund that they're looking to kind of divert money away from that allows nonprofits and localities to intervene in rate cases. That was actually put in place in 1982. So there's some pretty long-standing policy here that these set of bills touch that previous efforts have not.
I'm wondering if Republicans gave specific examples of reliability problems that they blame on current clean energy requirements, because it's affordability and reliability. That's the thrust of the argument here. Did they give any of that? Any examples?
I mean, nothing beyond typically what comes up just in with, the typical arguments against wind and solar. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. And, effectively their argument is that these resources are the ones that are increasing costs. So, but nothing particular that I remember.
Okay, so you're telling us this is more of the same, and we know that Democrats are in the majority in the state Senate, and Governor Whitmer, of course, is a Democrat. Is there any chance that this bill will pass?
I really don't see it. There would be a lot of motion. The 100% clean energy standard started in the Senate, so I don't see, the people, especially the people who, did put it forward, are still in office. I don't see everyone turning around and just going, hey, yeah, I know we did this 3 years ago. We don't like that idea anymore.
Democrats Julie Brixey and Joey Andrew argued that Republican Pat Outman's bill would lower the cap on distributed energy to 1%, calling it a de facto ban on who can access rooftop solar. So, of course, I have to ask you about that, because that would directly affect programs like Solarize. We just learned about Solarize earlier in the program. It helps neighbors group together to get bulk discounts on solar installations. How did Republicans respond to that criticism?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was essentially arguing that, no, this is not, in fact, a de facto ban. Really, the argument that they made was that, their customers should not be required to subsidize other individuals who are, linking up into the grid and things like there, which is interesting. I was talking with some individuals who work in the clean energy space this morning. And there's actually a study, it's a little old, from Lawrence Berkeley from 2017. And they said that that's not really something that impacts, other individuals on the grid. We don't really see impacts from, me hooking my solar panels up to, say, DTE's grid until, you have about 10% of people hooked in there as far as the impacts there. I'm not sure where it goes from there, but that was kind of their argument, was just that, no, this isn't a ban. And, this would require other individuals to pay for those individuals to have a solar panel.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. My guest is Kyle Davidson, reporter for Michigan Advance. We're talking about House Republican bills to eliminate Michigan's clean energy standards and the competing political arguments over what's really driving up energy costs. So now we have to get into the word of the hour, Kyle, which is affordability, because everyone's making affordability arguments here. This is something that you pointed out to me previously. I mean, Republicans blame high bills on clean energy mandates. Democrat Tanya Myers Phillips of Detroit says utility companies charge us a lot and there aren't enough guardrails. High energy prices, though, have been a reality for Michiganders for a long time. But you think this affordability argument, it's coming at a notable time, right? Talk about that.
Yeah. So just a little background. I've been at the Advance covering energy since pretty much 2023. And since that time, part of what I've taken up under my beat is covering rate case increases. So I've seen...
Which DTE is in the process of one right now. Is that right?
Yeah, as well as Consumers Energy, I believe. So, this is something that comes pretty much yearly anymore from most of Michigan's big energy utilities. So the idea that, hey, energy bills are all of a sudden way too high and everyone's drowning, that's not new. This is something that I've been hearing from people I talk with since, I took this job 3 years ago. But it's 2023. Obviously, I think the big word, even after going into the 2024 presidential election and even afterwards, is affordability. Gas prices are going up, and recently in the past month or so. So I think that really underscores like people are still really feeling the squeeze. So we've seen, both Senate Democrats introduce bills that they say will help take people's energy bills down. And we have this proposal from House Republicans, which they say they are going to tackle affordability on their end.
Okay, so what you're saying, Kyle, if I'm hearing you right, is that this is more of the same from Republicans in terms of bills to limit clean energy. However, what's different now is the framing. Is that right? That the framing is now about affordability.
Yeah. And that was definitely a piece of the argument I remember when I was covering the energy bills in 2023 when they were first put in place. But there were a lot of other discussions there, because part of that was also the zoning package. So there was discussions about, we're going to put solar panels over all this farmland, and there was discussions around local control. Whereas this package specifically, they are arguing that clean energy is responsible for jacking up energy rates within the state.
Republican Pauline Wendzel said this is only one part of their plan and more legislation is coming. Any sense of what they're planning?
Yeah, well, my colleague Ben Solis actually covered a press conference with the Michigan Speaker of the House, Matt Hall, recently. And I think one of the discussions there was maybe looking at a way to try and roll back some of these rate increases. So, I'm not a lawmaker, so I'm not exactly sure how that policy was, but that was definitely something else that was on the table, but, could potentially be quite a big lift to, look at policy wise.
I mean, we just heard about this grassroots voluntary approach to clean energy, again, through the Solarize program in Ann Arbor that is spreading to many other places in Metro Detroit and beyond in Michigan. How do you think that bottom-up model compares to this top-down fight over state mandates?
Yeah, I think it's definitely really interesting to look at the community view of it. You have communities that come together and say, hey, we really want to kind of try and boost our energy bills, or even, in the case of distributed generation, provide myself a little bit of extra protection, in case the power goes out, or my energy supplier isn't sending energy to my house. So it is definitely really interesting to see on the grassroots because people who participate in these programs, at least from what I've heard, they love it. They really appreciate it.
I mean, to that end, sorry to cut you off, but we're running out of time here. So I do want to get your take very quickly on this. Could there be a political space for Republicans to support voluntary programs while opposing state mandates?
There already is. There have been bipartisan bills within the Michigan State Senate for past sessions, probably long before I've been covering the legislature, focused on community solar, which Michigan does not currently have a framework for. But essentially, these allow customers to kind of buy into a solar project within their community. They can, subscribe to a certain amount of energy, and they'll have that provided to their house, and that'll take a chunk off their energy bill. So this is something that, was kind of argued that it's community approach. If you want to participate, you can. If you don't have to. And that's, something that's been discussed in the legislature for years. It's just never been able to quite make it across the finish line.
Okay, but it has had bipartisan support. So that is something for us to continue to follow. Kyle Davidson covers politics, the environment, and healthcare for Michigan Advance. Kyle, thanks for your reporting.
Thank you.
It's the Metro on WDET. We'll be right back.